Moscow's skyline marks a transformation from the Soviet past to a gleaming future plugged into a globalized economy. But now sanctions put all that at risk. Dozens of officials have been hit by travel bans and freezing of accounts. We're off to meet a man who was added to the EU's list on Monday.
Not exactly 70 years.
Vladimir Pligin is a parliamentarian who helped draft legislation to annex Crimea. He thinks sanctions just make de-escalation harder.
I believe that, first of all these sanctions, of course, cannot support the idea of dialogue. Especially the sanctions were done also against the chairmen of the both chambers of the Russian parliament. I believe that if we do not have such kind of sanctions, the dialogue can be continued more freely and on the more concrete basis, and especially in the international organizations.
Superpower confrontation seemed a thing of the past. So much so that this retro Moscow diner serves it up with irony. But now it's the US Treasury Department that leads the sanctions charge, trying to harm Russia's new elite.
The American idea is to go for those close to the president, indeed those who they think may be holding some of Putin's money, and to send a warning shot that they can be hurt and their cash can be seized.
Can that really work? Would President Putin listen, even if his friends were hurting?
That red line was moved.
We went to see a former member of the inner circle, a one-time prime minister who now opposes the president.
Of course, this touch of those people, that's painful. Painful for them, and of course, they're giving such signals directly to Mr. Putin, that they are under pressure, and Mr. Putin knows very well himself. That's why I think just that it's a new, I would say, mechanism. It's new technology. And I'd like to believe that it will work, rather than to punish the whole nation, I mean Russian people, just to touch those people.
Among those on the American list are old Putin friends from St. Petersburg, banker Yuri Kovalchuk, oilman Gennady Timchenko, and the Rothenberg brothers. The US has targeted some of their companies too, on the premise that Mr. Putin's funds may lurk there. Entities like Bank Russia or SMP Bank. The head of one of those banks told us about the impact on its operations.
The main effect is that we've lost part of our international business, our sister bank in Latvia, and our clients can no longer use dollars. We have difficulties in using euros for payments, and critically, 300,000 of our clients cannot use their credit cards, so we cannot give them the best service.
And if more people suffer because of sanctions, how will that play in such a volatile atmosphere? This was Sunday's scene when Ukrainian passport holders in Moscow were allowed to vote in East Ukraine's referendum. European and American leaders criticized Moscow for stoking the fires of separatism. For their part, those here voiced mistrust of the West.
I think there's a lot that the West doesn't see, and that is really dangerous. We can't reach out to the West. That's awful.
Could the sanctions simply be exacerbating a new division of Europe with little prospect of changing Mr. Putin's policies?
We know that there is an impact, but we cannot claim that this impact will necessarily lead to a policy change in Russia. On the contrary, one can argue that the sanctions might help to consolidate the Russian society, or at least the Russian political class around Putin, because the Russian elite will be deprived of opportunities that it used to have in the West, and therefore, almost by default, it will become more nationalistic.
So far, the real giants of Russia's banking or energy sectors, like Gazprom, have been untouched. But broader sanctions are being prepared in the EU and US. If that can be done without harming most Russians, then President Putin's opponents argue such steps could still work.
It is, from my perspective of today, it's clear. Mr. Putin is not crazy guy, I put it this way. That's why, and he's bluffing to a great extent. If the West right now, these 2 weeks prior to elections, would have a unified one voice on further steps, which would definitely will apply to Putin's regime, in this case, I think that could work. And he could somehow change and reconsider all these provocative activities.
Whether the sanctions can do the trick, or whether they'll just create new East-West tensions and solidify President Putin's domestic position isn't yet clear. But the Kremlin's supporters would rather not wait to find out. As the climate for investment here chills, they're calling for dialogue.
You see, President is also stressed several times that our country is ready for dialogue. It's ready for international cooperation of the preventing of the negative development of the situation. And also we are ready to observe all agreements which were concluded, for example, in Geneva. And of course, no intentions more than to stop the violence.
For some, the latest designers will just have to be picked up here rather than in Milan or Paris. For this society more broadly, Western capital could become harder to find, tipping the country into recession. Many will wear that out of patriotism, but sanctions have brought a chill to the Russian spring.